Today we're joined by Amin and Tom from VerifyiQ. This is a business that's solving the demanding process of file reviews for the accounting practice world. Excited to dive in, but first, I'd love to kick things off with a couple of introductions, maybe a deeper explanation of how VerifyiQ came to be.
Awesome. Yeah, well, Chris, thanks so much for having us, and it's a pleasure to jump on board and to join the Xero ecosystem. And we'll VerifyIQ as a third-party app. We've been live for a bit over a year now over the Intuit world, and then with a lot of your help, we joined the Xero community this past March. So really excited to be here, and yeah, I guess I'll kind of give the shorter version of it here, Chris. But for us, we were born out of doing things the wrong way inside an accounting firm. So on my end, I was on the advisory board of a cloud bookkeeping practice in Western Canada. And I watched that business go from the sole owner, working all the books himself, all the way through having several hundred clients and actually exiting that firm to a national buyer. So went through a couple of stage gates there of business growth. And one thing that we really faced hard when we got around 100 clients was this notion of quality and managing quality at scale. The way that we ended up solving it there was we hired extra line managers and we had them proofread everyone's work, doing a deep dive every single month. And it was effective, but the critiques I have of that approach were that we hired extra managers, so it was really expensive. And it was very demotivating for the frontline team members who now had a manager tapping them on the shoulder every single time they made a mistake. And when we asked these managers, what mistakes are you actually catching every month? The answer was, 80% of it is the same stuff over and over again. And that was really the light bulb moment for me as someone with a background in software and repeatable process. I was thinking, okay, here's a highly structured process that we want to go through 12 times a year per client, and everyone hates doing it, and we need mechanized consistency, which machines are really good at. So that's where I got introduced to Amin, and we put brains together and said there's got to be a better way. And we had Amin and his crew built an MVP that we took for some market validation. And we were wondering, as an accounting firm, had we been uniquely stupid and uniquely bad at running our business? And it turns out that was absolutely not the case. This problem exists in most firms that are past 50 clients in monthly bookkeeping. And I won't say the rest is history, but that the rest got us here. So where we are today is, while still being very young, we've been blessed to have a very robust platform, and at this point we're supporting several thousand clients on a monthly basis through a few dozen accounting firms and several hundred employees at those firms.
And Amin, I'd love to hear your story. How did you meet Tom, and how did you sort of get convinced to come on this adventure?
For sure, for sure. So I have a background in software architecture, and I was working. Um, I actually moved to Canada about, I think, 11 years ago to continue my studies, and then after that, I was working in the startup scene in Vancouver for 5 years, and went through the ups and downs of being a startup, getting acquired by a different company, and then from there to go through being part of a bigger company, and also getting a spin out of that into becoming a private company again. And that was the time that I actually thought that I have learned all the lessons that I could from that journey, and I want to be able to help more startups to be able to go through the same journey of building something, getting it from 0 to 100, and then going ahead and build more of that. So I thought that this is an exciting opportunity for us. We have the expertise in our team. We can help build this tool. It seems like an exciting enough opportunity for me to be involved in even more than just having our development team work on that. And that's why I jumped on the opportunity.
Yeah, true to form, you mentioned going from 0 to 100, and this series is called 0 to 1 because I really want to focus on the concept of how you take something from nothing and like the storytelling that goes into that. And I was living in Bellingham, Washington, so I was your neighbor for a few years.
Yeah.
I love Vancouver, love Canada in general, but that's a great story of how you guys met. So to really like get into deep into the problem, like what's the most grueling example of this accountant file review? Tom, you mentioned you scaled a firm to a size that had this issue, but just like paint me a picture of like how stressful and time consuming that problem was.
Yeah, absolutely. So, the individual in the firm that we help the most would be the line manager who usually owns the end client relationship. And so, in a smaller practice, at right around that 50 client mark, that's actually still the firm owner. That's the firm principal, and they've hired a few associates. Some of them may be offshored, but that could be regional. And actually, in our experience, we found, offshored resources often get blamed for poor quality, and I think that's totally unfair. I think that regional reps and local reps sitting at a desk away from you make as many mistakes as someone offshore. That's asynchronous on communication. They get unfairly blamed for poor quality. And so, that manager, as the business grows, they're actually now ultimately responsible for all the work that's done on all 50 clients, and they're getting varying levels of performance from their frontline team and technicians that are doing the work, and it's part of it's training, but a lot of it's also just kind of like mechanized consistency in that, right? And my wife could tell you the story of how I forget to run the dishwasher in the evening, probably like once every 2 weeks. Like, yeah, oh shoot, I just forgot to turn it on last night. I wake up in the morning, I've got dirty dishes, right? And it's that kind of error. And when it comes to completing bookkeeping, the checklist of little things to remember is so long. And you're doing it so many times across so many clients that these little human errors, it's called human error for a reason. These human errors creep in. And when they do creep in, you're relying on the manager to catch them. And if the manager doesn't catch them, then they show up in front of the client. And if the client catches them, then it's a world of hurt. Right? Then the manager is now spending an hour to several hours of workflow on hearing the customer complaint, dealing with it, apologizing for it, maybe issuing a credit, you name it. So giving that manager the peace of mind that there's been some kind of an automated check or a test suite that's been run through the file to give them peace of mind that this is truly error-free. You don't have to worry on your own expertise and your own ability to catch things when you're tired. A machine did this for you, and that's where we come in, but then also qualify that we're not full automation. So we catch the most common errors so that we can free up management time to really work on the sophisticated, nuanced issues that are client specific, which is the stuff that managers and bookkeepers actually like working on. I thought those are the interesting accounting challenges, not the basics of having missed a reconciliation or having not cleared a clearing account, for example.
Well, I've got a ton more questions on sort of like the origin story of the business, but I'm in to be respectful of your time. I'd really love to maybe switch gears a little bit, and if you could maybe break down how the engineering team works. How do you interface with the accountants and CPAs on your team? You work in sprints, like what project management tools? Like I want to hear like how software gets shipped.
So we have a couple of different parts to our platform from the engineering part. One of them is our UX design. So our UX team is actually working on figuring out what's the best way to show this vast amount of data that we are collecting from accounting softwares and running our test engine rules on that to be what's the best way to show that to the customers. Also, we want to create they work on what is the best way of letting the different people inside an accounting firm to communicate with each other when they are trying to resolve an issue on a specific line item within a specific report and all of that. So that's the first line of defense, or basically our UX design team, and that figure out what's the best way of showing that information to the customers. And then after that, it's our development team, our front-end development team that works on making that UX and a reality in the software sense of like making sure that is exactly how our customers are experiencing the software. A lot of the nitty-gritty thing of like how those errors or warnings are calculated, or how we go from one scan to another scan of the data basically comes down to our server and how our test engine rules fetches the data from accounting softwares like Xero and runs our test on that. We do have an engine for our rules that figure out what is the right restrictions and threshold to put on each one of the clients, because we understand different clients of an accounting firm might have different type of transactions, and they might expect different type of thresholds when it comes to marking something as error or correct or warning. And we also, behind the scene, are gathering all these data in an anonymized way to build our machine learning algorithms on top of that, that we can then suggest new ways of, okay, these are things that we always catch them as incorrect and you always are marking them as right. Maybe this additional rule is something that you can add to this client so we can automate even more of the accounting, the verification process for you. And so those type of things they all live in our backend, in our server side that deals with fetching the data, storing that data securely, and then running our test engine on top of that.
And you mentioned this right in the middle there about how different clients have vastly different data, whether they're different small business industry. Can you talk to me a little bit about how like that is a bit of a moving target? I imagine the different industries, different local regulations, different tax forms coming out, governmental regulations. Like, how's your team handled the ability to not create a bunch of tech debt now to sort of expand in like what you might want to build into the future? Like, have you developed some modular ways to add rules, or talk to me a little bit about the code that goes into making sure that you can not just solve for today, but for tomorrow.
100%. Well, as a startup, the most important thing, the day one for us was to get these things out of the door as fast as possible. But because of my background in building startups and helping startups grow and scale throughout the way, one of the things that we brought into the table was looking at the areas that will be very painful for us to scale in the future, and at least know about them beforehand, if not placing a correct architecture in place in those areas. And that's exactly what we did. For example, one iteration for us was to go from static rules to dynamic rules for different clients. And from day one, we knew that the end game for us is to have a fully automated rule engine that is actually can generate new rules based on the client's behavioral pattern. So we had that end game in mind when we were doing our static rule design as well. So we kept that design pattern in mind when we were doing that, so that when we were going from that into dynamic one based on client, we could easily move into that direction as well. When we want to go from this to our next iteration, it will be easy for us to go down that path, just to make sure that whenever we are creating those technical debts, we are aware of it. I don't think technical debt is something bad at all. I think it's a positive thing as long as you know where you are taking debt. It's just like taking debt in the business. If you're doing that responsibly, you'll be okay.
Yeah, that's spot on. The future is bright.
Yes.
And that sort of last tech question for you, and you can kick this to Tom because I'm sure he has something to say about it. But because your product relies on an external data source as your primary building block, what are some of those challenges you faced as an engineer to keep your API connection resilient and keep your customers, using your product?
It's been challenging, to say the least, to integrate with multiple platforms, and we want to expand that side. Luckily for me, actually, my experience in the past 10 years was all on integration and building integration with different platforms. In our previous company, it was like that was what I was hired for, and I was just doing that for the 4 or 5 years there. And then after that, at AY, and then at Craver, and at VERIFYiQ. So that is what I have expertise on. So a lot of those curveballs that comes your way when you are building integration were something that I have seen in the past, and that helped us to be able to maneuver around those to get to the answers faster. But things that comes up a lot. Different platforms using different authentication methods, different timeline for the tokens that they're using, the way that they store token or they let you store token. Like there are a lot of standards there, but not everyone living up to all those standards, and we understand that, and that's expected. It's software. We are all improving at all times. But then that's one side of the challenge. The other side of the challenge is we have our sort of data storage of like how we collect data and like store and show to the customer. So we have our presentation layer even from the data perspective, but then mapping that to what we can get from different integration partners, it's a challenge because we designed that first with from a UX perspective of what customer want to see. Then we need to look into figure out which part of this data is available from these different data sources that we have, and like be able to fill that and figure out if it's not available, how can we show that, what could be a replacement for that. So all of that were some of the challenges that we had where we had to deal with the integration with our data sources, but things that we were ready for it. That was good.
And that's just a last question before you jump. Is there anything you'd like to say to other developers who are maybe facing, similar uphill climbs to integrate with Xero, or anything you want to say to the community?
So first of all, our experience with integrating with Xero was really good. The development advisors and like the resources that were available on the website were really, really useful. I think people are seeing the value in providing API data through APIs to potential partners, and we have seen that across the board in the accounting industry as well as other industries. So I think being able to integrate with a partner in this year is probably easier than last year and way easier than the way before that. So I think if that's the way that they want to do, I think right now they have a good tools at their hands to be able to make that happen.
Yeah, well, I'm just so grateful for you joining today. You sound like an integration pro. I'm really excited to see where your business grows from here. I got tons more questions for Tom, so feel free to hang out as long as you can or as you like. But if not, I'll follow up with you later. And yeah, thanks again for coming.
Thanks a lot, guys. I'll jump off, and Tom, you can continue with the rest. Thanks, Chris. Thanks, Tom.
Yeah, and I'd love to hear a little bit about the genesis. So like, I don't know, walk me through the day or the hour that this idea sort of came up. You said you worked at an accounting firm and you saw this bad processes evolving, but what was like the bam, quit your job moment?
Yeah, so I think it was that. There's sort of the idea moment, and then there's the quit your job moment, right? So the idea was, because I was on the advisory board at this firm, so I wasn't actually actively working in the firm, but I was there at the advisory level, and when we asked them, we kind of done we deployed our solution of hiring extra managers to deal with quality, and it's when they were at the advisory meeting, and we asked, great, quality is better. Just out of curiosity, like, what are the things that you've been catching? And it's when someone said, hey, like 80% of it is the same stuff over and over again. Like that was the moment of like, oh gosh, why are we doing this to ourselves? Like, why are we doing this to our team? If it's 12 times a year and it's the same thing over and over again, like there's just gotta be a better way, right? And the efficacy that we've seen with our customer base is you can actually remove a full-time manager level team member in a practice by putting our tool in, right? So we've seen some clients save over $100,000 a year by putting our tool in. And I think to date, nobody's been fired because of VERIFYiQ. I think it's always been in these growth environments, and these managers have so much of the stuff to be doing. So they're gainfully employed, but we've definitely helped firms defer hires and bring more to their bottom line as a result. So I think that was kind of the idea moment. And then the quit your job moment, I think we actually wanted really strong market validation before we dove in. So So this was run off the side of desks, and actually I was not the main operating partner until quite recently. But this was kind of run off the side of desks for the better part of a year, if not longer. And I think that the company actually produced revenue dollars before anybody really jumped in full time. And that's how much I think it speaks to the value of the problem we're solving, as well as kind of how much time we put into customer validation. And you asked about other business partners. Actually, the majority of our friends and family investors were all owners of cloud accounting firms who were living this problem. So we raised that money off of a few wireframes and an MVP that barely worked.
Wow, it's pretty impressive. So
Yeah, it
you've
was
got
fun.
Amin's firm, you've got yourself, and you've got the sort of the partner where the firm, excuse me, where you spun off from the firm. You live in Calgary, is that correct?
I think yeah. So the company's based in Vancouver, and we kicked VERIFYiQ off when I was still living in Vancouver, and my wife's career brought us out to Calgary. So I'm the one odd duck out in the team that's not living in Vancouver.
That's great though. Yeah, it sounds like you have family from the background.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. The screams of bloody murder in the background. We have a highly opinionated 15-month-old at home, so
Beautiful.
he keeps us busy.
Yeah, I imagine. It sounds like you're busy with your business, busy with your family.
Yeah.
Um, so when you were sort of chewing through those initial months of validating this product and something that your actual accountant partners would pay for, when did you learn that Xero had an API, or that had been already something that you had looked at to leverage for your own improvement process?
Yeah, because when we were working without APIs, I think our like where the cost impact was for us in the last business was that probably like a good 30% of our monthly spend on development was maintaining all our integrations. And our experience at VERIFYiQ is north of 90% is net new feature R&D. But it feels like a different world.
And Xero's investment in the ecosystem has changed even just in the year that I've been here. We really realized we're not going to solve all the edge cases through our UI. And I mean, you mentioned Stripe, they're world-class development first product. As a developer, I've worked with them, and it's, yeah, far and away one of the greatest experiences to integrate with. And we're definitely trying to become more of a small business hub than, solve every feature in the UI, because there's brilliant folks all over the world in Canada who are solving the business problems that a lot of our customers are facing, whether those be accountants and bookkeepers or the actual small businesses themselves. Yeah, so I would love to just break into a little bit of a storytelling around one of your customers.
Yeah.
So you mentioned, maybe this is like your first customer or just your best solution customer. Just like some numbers and some story around like what they were doing before, sort of like your experience of hiring to scale that audit product process, but what's been a sort of encapsulated stories and maybe some metrics surrounding like one of your customers' successes?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think I'll use a group out of Atlanta and named Acuity. And the two principals there, Matthew May. I think his tech handle is or Twitter handle is the Tech CPA. And actually, I was and his partner Kenji. We were actually just on a call with them, or I did a little like drink while you think interview session with them about a week ago. So I'm gonna lazily rehash some of the same content there. But yeah, kind of working with Matthew and Kenji and their crew. So they're what we consider an enterprise client. So they're operating a full suite of different accounting service lines, from advisory to tax to client accounting services, which is where our relationship intersects. And without revealing their P&L here, I'll say that they're in the hundreds of clients that they manage on a monthly basis, and that they're multi-platform. So they use us on both Xero and QBO in their client base. And with them, in the success we saw early on with our implementation of VERIFYiQ is that they were running 2 full-time directors of accounting. That was kind of their title for line manager, overseeing the bookkeeping function. And very quickly they were able to reassign one of those FTEs to a different service line in the practice. So right out of the gates, for the size client base that they were maintaining, they saved, which for them was, kind of, to make rough numbers, well over $50,000 US a year in terms of bottom line savings. And that's just on the labor. What's harder for us to quantify is, what's the value of less errors slipping out to your clients and the peace of mind for management in general. But the brass tacks labor savings is an FTE, right, in their situation. And then one of the stats that we get about our customers is we see how many clients they're managing on the platform. And what we've seen with Acuity is, they've been adding dozens of clients over the past year. And I know actually just recently, they've now gone and hired a director of accounting again to put in to help support the growing customer base in the client accounting services line. But that's after seeing significant revenue growth in the portfolio. And they're a group that tends to be able to invest in and hire ahead for even further growth that's planned. So they're kind of our shining story, and we've worked with some outsourcing groups as well that are in the thousands of clients, and similar numbers there around management FTEs, watching those teams add hundreds of clients without adding management labor. That's where we really come in.
And just as a quick background for the listeners, like I worked as your developer evangelist to get VERIFYiQ certified in the marketplace. So I got to know you and I got to experience your app. And I'm curious because it was a very simple process to kind of get that data flowing and get that process started. You're selling to firms, accounting
Correct.
Firms. How much training and sort of pre-sales consulting are you doing with them before they're, integrating their first client? Or a lot of these folks just trialing one in an afternoon and saying, wow, this is something that I could do? Or is there a lot of sort of hand-holding and consulting around the onboarding?
Yeah, so great question. The answer really varies by the firm. And I think that, when firm size is below 40 clients, we generally don't sell. And I think just the scale of the problem isn't there to merit the investment in a tool like ours. And on the Intuit side, for those really small practices, like Intuit's built a native bookkeeping review tool for a sole practitioner that's actually like pretty good, right? So don't use a cannon to kill a mosquito. So firms between 40 and 100 clients, it's usually a very quick yes/no. They have a look at it, they understand they might be on a call with myself or someone else in the business, and we don't lock at that scale. We don't lock into annual contract. It's purely month to month on a credit card for fees. So okay, great, I'm in, right? And so that's a pretty quick answer. The larger groups, the enterprise groups, there you're dealing with a bureaucracy. So we're always relying on a champion who probably reaches that same decision of, okay, I see the value and I want this. They're probably there as quickly as the smaller firm, but now they've got to navigate the approvals. And where we usually end up running there is that we're doing a month-long pilot with one business unit or one manager and their direct reports to validate our claimed and third-party referenced efficacy is actually then validated internally, and then we get into a procurement exercise, and there we're selling annual contracts that are often prepaid. And
So in your past careers, have you ever experienced selling to consumers or customers or small businesses? Because something that we do at Xero is very similar to you, is like we strictly look to the accountants and bookkeeper channel to sell our product as well, because it's a much different sales channel. So I'm just curious, can you tell me a little bit about like how engaging with that market's different than a traditional consumer?
Yeah, absolutely. So actually at VERIFYiQ, we had this initial dream that we would double dip. So we would sell to the firm, and we would also sell to the small business directly. And we would sell to the small business directly under the use case of keep your bookkeeper honest. And that was our big Machiavellian dream. And that was like a big capital F failure. And what we learned is that, first off, our bookkeeping firm clients really didn't appreciate that messaging being out there. And second, the small business owners, they just didn't care. the whole reason they hire a outsourced bookkeeper and accounting firm is so they can just run their business and not have to worry about this stuff. So we very quickly abandoned ship on that because we saw it was an uphill battle. Even just getting time on a call, explain the value prop, they didn't get it. Some of the larger firms, they like to be platform agnostic, and they have the scale to efficiently operate a QBO team as well as a Xero team, as well as a Sage team and a NetSuite team, right, within the practice. So, some of our earliest customers were ones that we were already embedded with them at scale on another platform. And when we added Xero, great. That was an existing customer for us that just clicked on another 100, 200 clients on a new platform.
And just digging into Xero a little bit, I want honest feedback around API. I know Amin had some interesting learnings around how our API is structured differently. How is that? Is there any difference in culture or firms? Obviously, Intuit QuickBooks is huge market share in the United States and Canada. How does Xero play into your strategy, and what have been some challenges of working with the platform?
Yeah, absolutely. So interesting. One thing we've seen is that while Xero is a newer entrant into this market, and there's this whole legacy install base of QuickBooks Desktop, and there's a big marketing path there of as all those small businesses go to the cloud, how does Intuit maintain them in under their brand as opposed to going to Xero or another brand? We found, despite Xero being newer, we find that the firms that we do run into that are on Xero are more consistently a fit for our product. The firms are run by newer, younger, more progressive owners that believe in standardizing tech stacks, that believe in automation, that believe in the cloud. That's sort of an entry point to this whole world is you believe in the cloud. And we've actually found that the conversations we have with folks in the Xero ecosystem on a customer base side are much stronger than they are in other platform worlds, and I think that's just because folks that have ended up in that world tend to have come from the offline desktop world, and just their willingness to adopt I think is lower, and a bit more resistance to change there. So it's, like I said, yeah, smaller market share, but within that market share, there's more of what we like to see. And we're several months into our relationship with you, and I'd think that when we look back on a sort of a trailing 12 months of in the year since we integrated, I actually picture that we might have a much stronger market, even revenue base with our Xero customers than we would with other platforms, just given that how strong that fit is.
Well, as a team, I can just say we're super grateful for entrepreneurs and people like yourself who take the time and invest the resources to build into our platform, because we're truly looking way forward. Our 10,000 foot view is ecosystem first. Don't solve for all these edge cases. Let our ecosystem of amazing people help us solve the world's accounting problems. So yeah, awesome. Just big thank you from our team. And
my pleasure.
To ping that back to you, what is sort of the 10,000 foot strategy for VERIFYiQ? You've mentioned onboarding new data sources, but I'm sure there's a million features you want to build, but just at a high level, I just want to hear your vision for where you're driving this business.
Yeah, so I think it all started with making the law, first off, creating peace of mind within outsourced accounting firms, and then just making the lives of the people that work in these firms more enjoyable. So wherever there's this kind of pedantic drudgery that those team members are going through, we like to attack those challenges. And I go back to, so there's the actual testing and figuring out what's wrong in a file, and that was kind of the first thing we tackled. The next thing that we tackled was looking at communication around issues on a file and in a file review. And at the previous firm, we literally had this old spreadsheet, so we would export the P&L out of a GL, and then we'd have two columns for being technician comments and manager comments, and this Excel spreadsheet would get emailed back and forth on an email thread with changes tracked on it. And then when we got really advanced, we started using Slack channels to send these things back and forth in Slack channels, and then we did Google Sheets. And right, like that's what we were dealing with. It's like, okay, this really sucks. And so at VerifyIQ, we've built an engine to actually, tag comments in context. It sends alerts out to the users, and that collaboration's there. So that was kind of the next area to tackle. The one that's coming down the pipeline, I think, is advisory, and this idea of kind of these helpful reminders or taps on the shoulder of saying, hey Chris, you're helping this client here. Just so you know, like here's what happened to their cash balance. Like they have an excess cash balance. Have you thought about advising them around some investment products or some of these like whole life insurance policies that really are only accessible to business owners with lots of strong cash flow for a number of years, right? And we've sort of seen an ecosystem of, in this advisory world, like how much revenue can be made in referral fees for referring insurance or investment products or otherwise, right? Or other advisory opportunities. So I think that's one general direction, but I think we also have a bunch of work to do to make our core use cases, or serving our core use cases better and better. We have a few competitors in the space. We're not the only ones tackling this problem. I think that we're tackling it well, but there are also really good ideas. And I look at our feature backlog. There are about 200, very valid improvements that more than one user has requested. That I think can make VerifyIQ a better and better tool.
You're obviously very in tune with your customers you're selling to and your existing business. So I'm very excited to see and, help you evolve your API connection to be deeper and just, in general, just be a fan from the sidelines. Yeah, well, I just want to thank you again. If you're an accountant or bookkeeper listening in, I'll link Tom's app down in the comments, VerifyIQ, a great piece of software. It's going to help a lot of people run their businesses more effectively. And I just want to leave it with you and just let you sort of open up the floor and say anything you like to the Xero community.
Yeah, no, Chris, thanks so much for having us. And I just want to say that for any app developers out there that they're kind of starting from scratch or are on other platforms and are evaluating Xero, I'd say that the onboarding experience has been first rate. And working with you, Chris, has been much more high touch than we've seen elsewhere. And it's been super supportive. And also, echoing Amin's comments earlier, is that that the documentation and the resources are really strong. And if you've got some talented developers behind you, it is easy, and it's not actually no. I won't use the word easy, but it is very reasonable to navigate through. And one can actually build a very successful app without an outrageous level of investment. No, it's a great space, and I think the more strong apps, the more problems that are solved in this space, the better all the firms do, and the better all these small businesses do as well.
Yeah, on behalf of all of our customers, you're solving challenging problems for a lot of our existing business, so we thank you for that.